The snowstorm had swallowed every sound around Pinewood Motel, as if the world itself wanted to hide what was happening inside room 12. From the outside, the place looked like a frozen postcard. White drifts piled against the railing, the neon vacancy sign flickering unevenly, a lone tree creaking under the weight of ice. Inside, however, my wife Helen was exactly where she thought no one would ever find her. She underestimated me. They always do. I was parked 100 yards away, engine off, letting the cold creep into my bones, while I watched the soft amber glow leaking through her motel curtains. Her car, a blue Highlander I had bought for her 5 years ago, sat right outside her door. At least it did an hour ago. By the time Helen opened the door and stepped out into the frozen air, tightening her coat around her, the Highlander was already halfway to home. She didn't scream. That surprised me. Most people stepping out into a snowstorm at midnight and finding their car gone would panic. Helen didn't. She froze only for a second, her eyes narrowing as she followed the tire tracks that cut through the untouched snow, leading straight into the forest beside the motel. She thought it had been stolen. Good. Let her mind run. Let her panic simmer just under the skin. What she didn't know was that I had parked the Highlander neatly on our driveway 2 hours earlier, wiped the wheel, left the keys and her wedding ring on the dining table, and walked back out before she even realized the car was missing. I'd left the ring on purpose. It wasn't a message. It was a post-mortem tag. A reminder that the marriage had died long before I ever acknowledged it. By the time she made it home, on foot, hitchhiking, or begging a ride, I didn't care. The stage would already be set. The snow muffled everything as I drove my old pickup along the back road. No radio, no heater, just the sound of the tires crushing frozen earth and my own steady breath. People think revenge burns hot. They're wrong. The real thing is cold, measured, surgical. I didn't scream when I saw Helen slipping into Pinewood Motel the first time. I didn't confront her when she started taking yoga nights 3 times a week. I didn't argue when she began guarding her phone like a secret life support device. I simply observed, and that was my advantage. Helen never noticed silence. When she finally arrived home that night, it was exactly as I predicted. I heard the front door open, then slam shut as the wind rushed in behind her. She gasped, a small, involuntary sound, when she saw the Highlander sitting untouched on the driveway. She walked in fast, boots thudding, breath still visible in the air. She stopped dead in front of the kitchen table. The keys, her ring, my handwriting on a piece of paper with only 2 words. I know. She didn't cry. Not yet. First came the shock, then the denial, then the desperate flicker of hope. Maybe I didn't know everything, maybe there was still a way out. Then came fear. Real, physical fear. I walked in through the back door a moment later, snow melting on my shoulders. She spun around as if I were a stranger in her home. I didn't yell. I didn't demand an explanation. I just looked at her and said quietly, "Helen, I know." Her mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came. "John, please just listen." But I had nothing to listen to. I turned away and walked into my workshop, the one place in the house she never stepped into. The smell of cedar, oil, and cold steel always calmed me. Tools don't lie. Wood doesn't cheat. Nothing pretends inside these walls. I closed the door behind me and let silence fill the space. The silence told her more than shouting ever could. while she paced in the kitchen, trying to come up with a story believable enough to patch the gaping wound between us, I remembered how our relationship began. Two kids who'd convinced themselves that surviving hard years meant staying together forever. But time had turned me into furniture in her life. Useful, stable, invisible, something you only notice when it's gone. And I was about to be gone. In the morning, Helen came into the kitchen with the soft, guilty face of someone rehearsing an apology. She trembled slightly as she poured coffee, as if the mug itself judged her. "John," she whispered, "I made a mistake. I want to fix this. We can see a counselor. We can talk. I don't want to lose you." I nodded slowly, letting her believe I was considering forgiveness. Giving her that tiny flame of hope was necessary. Without hope, consequences lose their sting. We lived in a fragile armistice for a few days, her trying to pretend nothing had happened, me watching every micro-expression, every flinch, every lie slipping through the cracks. People think liars get better at lying with practice. But the truth is, the longer they lie, the sloppier they get. And Helen, she was sloppy. One night, while she showered, her laptop buzzed with a notification. I hadn't searched her things before. I didn't need to. But this time, the subject line caught my eye. "Thursday night plans confirmed. Same room as last time." I opened the thread. What I found wasn't an affair. It was a blueprint, a plan, a timeline of messages spelling out exactly how long she'd been using me. Not just emotionally, but financially. She wasn't cheating on me. She was preparing to leave me after bleeding me dry. The motel was a series of transactions, meetings, and negotiations with another man named Rick Howell. I didn't need FBI-level software to understand what I was seeing. It was all spelled out clearly. They planned everything: where she would move, what accounts she would drain, which assets she'd claim I'd abandoned, how Rick would help her transition. Every detail carefully mapped. This wasn't betrayal. It was calculated extraction. I closed the laptop gently, as if it were a fragile artifact, and sat in the dark until Helen came home late that night with the same tired excuse she'd rehearsed for weeks. The moment she walked in, I turned the screen toward her. Her whole body deflated, as if someone had punched the air out of her lungs. "Oh, God. John," she whispered. I didn't yell. I didn't hit anything. I didn't cry. I simply said, "Sit." She sat. "Tell me," I said quietly, "how long you've been planning this?" She broke. And when people break, truth spills out in violent, disjointed pieces. She admitted everything: the affair, the financial manipulation, the staged arguments meant to paint me as unstable, the plan to take the house, the accounts, even my workshop. The room felt too small to contain all the lies. I spent the rest of that night collecting bank statements, receipts, investment records. I made piles, marked dates, traced transactions. Numbers don't lie, and the numbers told a story far uglier than infidelity. I highlighted everything in yellow: the amounts, the transfers, the money she moved without telling me. The total was staggering: $18,026,434,900. Even though it meant nothing in real-world logic for a middle-class craftsman, the number stood as a metaphorical weight, the sum of everything she siphoned emotionally, psychologically, financially. A number built out of years of trust. By sunrise, the truth was too large to ignore. Helen walked into the living room, her eyes swollen, her voice trembling. "John, I'm so sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to stop. Rick, he pressured me, I swear. He said..." Her excuses rolled off me like water off steel. What she didn't realize was that I had already shifted into a different mode. Not anger, not grief. Something far more dangerous. Clarity. I packed a bag and moved into the guest room that morning. Helen watched me, terrified, understanding exactly what that meant. The next step would be professional. I met Tom, my closest friend, later that day at Rusty's Diner. He listened to everything quietly, jaw tightening with every detail. When I finished, he didn't ask stupid questions. He didn't pity me. Instead, he slid a business card across the table. Janet Cruz, family law, assets and litigation. She's the best, he said, and she doesn't lose. That was all I needed. Janet didn't waste time either. When I showed her everything I'd collected, she nodded once, then again slower, her expression sharpening. We're not going to confront her, Janet said. We're going to document her. You need a separate account, you need an inventory of the house, and you need to prepare for the next mistake she's going to make, because she will make one. Her voice was calm. Mine was colder. Tell me what to do. Tom and I spent the afternoon photographing every item in the house. Furniture, jewelry, tools, appliances, artwork. He held the list while I took pictures, documenting everything the way Janet instructed. Helen walked in on us halfway through. The look in her eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was dawning realization. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the one holding all the cards. And for her, that was a fate worse than losing her car in a snowstorm. That night, I opened a new account in my name only and transferred half the remaining funds, legally, cleanly, by Janet's instruction. I felt something unfamiliar as I walked out of the bank. Not guilt, not triumph, relief. Janet called me the next morning with more information. Rick Howell, Helen's partner in crime, was a married man with 2 children, a failing business, and a history of extramarital projects. He wasn't a mastermind. He was a parasite. And for the first time in months, I realized something important. I was no longer prey. I was something else entirely. The morning after I opened the new bank account, everything felt unnervingly calm. The snow had stopped. The roads were quiet. The house felt too clean, too still, like the air just before a storm takes its first breath. Helen hovered around me like a ghost afraid of being seen. She kept opening her mouth, thinking she could talk her way out of a disaster she engineered herself, but each time she saw my expression, she shut it again. She wasn't used to losing control. She wasn't used to me being the one who dictated the terms. The new reality frightened her. And it was only the beginning. I drove to Janet's office at 10 sharp. She was already waiting with 2 folders, one blue, one red. "John," she said, sliding the red one forward, "this is everything we know about Helen's financial activity for the last 18 months. You were right. This wasn't impulsive. She's been positioning herself to leave you while draining assets you legally own. We'll use this." Her tone was matter-of-fact, almost surgical. "And this," she tapped the blue folder, "is about Howell." I opened it. Photographs, emails, business filings, credit records, court documents with small print and big red flags. "His construction business is collapsing," Janet continued. "He's leveraged every asset he has. He owes back taxes. If he hadn't involved your wife, he'd probably be in jail already." I stared at a picture of the man, mid-40s, smug smile, the kind of guy who mistakes confidence for competence. "He saw Helen as a lifeline," Janet said, "and she saw him as an escape route. They both think you're the safest target." I closed the folder and took a slow breath. Not anymore. "Here's what we'll do," Janet said, leaning forward. "Inventory first, separate account, quiet surveillance, no confrontations, no shouting, no threats. Let them destroy themselves. Let them make the next mistake." I nodded. Silence was my weapon now, and I'd learned how to use it well. Tom showed up an hour later with 2 thermoses of coffee and a look that meant he was ready for a war. "You good?" he asked. "I'm clear," I replied. He nodded, understanding exactly what that meant. We spent hours walking through the house again, filling in the missing items on Janet's list. Tom photographed everything with his phone while I noted values and dates. It felt mechanical, almost boring, until Helen walked into the living room. Her eyes flicked between us, then to the folders, then to the camera in Tom's hand. What are you doing?" she asked with forced lightness. Tom didn't look up. I did. "Documenting," I said. She swallowed hard. "John, is that really necessary? I thought we were trying to fix things." I said I was sorry, I meant it. "You meant it yesterday," I said. "But yesterday isn't evidence." Her face tightened, but she didn't argue. She just watched, helpless for the first time since I'd known her, as Tom and I cataloged every detail of her life. When she left the room, Tom whispered, "She's rattled." "Good." "She should be," I said quietly. It wasn't cruelty. It was balance. The more we uncovered, the more the truth sharpened like the edge of a blade. Transfers made at midnight, withdrawals she'd labeled as house expenses, payments to accounts I didn't recognize, receipts for expensive dinners and hotel stays she had never mentioned. The pattern was undeniable. By the time we finished, my entire dining table was covered in yellow highlighted evidence. The house looked like a crime scene, and in a way it was. At 6:12 p.m., Helen walked in again. She'd been gone for hours. Errands, she claimed. Her hair was wind-blown, and her eyes were rimmed red. She'd been crying. Whether from guilt or fear, I didn't care. She looked at the table and froze. "John," she whispered, "please don't do this. We can talk. We can fix—" I slid one of the folders toward her. "These are your choices," I said. "You can deny them, or you can admit them." She looked at the pages, at her own emails, her own transfers, her own bookings, and her knees buckled. She sat down slowly, like an old woman. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't respond. Because the truth is, people never mean for betrayal to go this far. They just don't mind walking the first few steps. And the rest follows naturally. The next morning, everything escalated. Rick Howell showed up. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't wait. Just pulled into my driveway in a beat-up black SUV with dented fenders and a bumper sticker peeling in the cold. The engine shut off, but the arrogance stayed running. He walked up to my porch with the entitled swagger of a man who thinks he's the hero of the story. Tom was already at my place. He brought breakfast. And also, to be fair, he enjoyed front-row seats to human stupidity. Helen stood by the window, panicked, whispering, "Oh, God," over and over as Rick approached. "This should be fun," Tom muttered. Rick didn't knock. He tried to open the door. I opened it for him. He shoved a finger in my face. "We need to talk. Right now." "No," I said calmly. "We don't." "Yes, we damn well do," he barked. "Helen told me what you're doing. These games, these files, this stalking crap. You think you scare me?" Tom leaned against the wall, chewing a piece of toast like he was watching a football game. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "This is private property," I said. "You're trespassing." Rick laughed, a loud, ugly sound. "Oh, look at that, he's playing lawyer. Buddy, you're out of your depth." Actually, I wasn't. He just didn't know that yet. "I'll ask once," I said, quietly. "Leave." "Make me," he sneered. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed neighbors gathering behind curtains. A few stood on porches. Small towns are like that. Conflict is entertainment. I didn't raise my voice. "Rick," I said, "if you stay another 2 minutes, I'll call the sheriff. And when he arrives, I'll hand over the documentation your wife sent to Janet this morning." His expression shifted. Ah. So he didn't know. "Sharon knows everything," I said. "About the motel? About the transfers? About the business accounts? About Helen? She filed preliminary charges an hour ago." He paled so fast it was almost impressive. "Liar," he hissed. Tom walked up, holding the manila folder Janet had sent earlier. "You should probably take this," Tom said with a grin. "It has your name all over it." Rick snatched the folder, skimmed the first page, and his eyes widened in terror. How? This is illegal," he stuttered. "No," I said. "It's discovery." He froze. I could almost hear him calculating escape routes. Then he saw Helen through the window. "Helen," he choked out. Tell him none of this is true." Helen didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stared at him, with the dawning realization that her partner was about to abandon her the second it benefited him. Rick's shoulders slumped. His arrogance collapsed. Then he turned and walked back to his SUV without another word. Perfect. 1 down. 1 to go. Helen collapsed onto the couch the second he was gone. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said breathlessly. "Rick said, he promised, he told me—" "Rick lies," I said. "You lie. I don't." She flinched. "John, I still love you." "No," I said. "You loved the version of me who didn't know." She started crying again, but tears don't move me anymore. Not from her. Not after everything she orchestrated. She finally whispered, "What are you going to do?" And that was the moment she should have realized the truth. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to burn her clothes. I wasn't going to smash her phone or throw her out onto the street. I was going to do something far worse. I was going to follow the law. And the law was on my side. Tom patted my shoulder as he left. "You're handling this better than most men would." "I'm not most men," I said. He grinned. "Damn right." By that evening, the sheriff had issued a temporary property hold order, meaning Helen couldn't take a paperclip from the house without violating the law. Janet had arranged it, and she moved fast. Helen tried arguing that night, desperate to spin things back in her favor. "You're being cruel, John," she said. "You're punishing me. You're trying to control me." "No," I said. "Control was your game. I'm just ending it." She stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Then came the punchline. "I can still fix this," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You can't." Later that night, after Helen locked herself in the bedroom and cried into the pillow she once hid lies under, I sat in my workshop, sanding the edge of a rocking chair I'd been working on for weeks. The motions were steady, rhythmic, meditative. Wood doesn't lie. Wood doesn't cheat. Wood becomes whatever you make it. At 9:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. Janet. "Sharon filed official charges against Howell. More to come. I'll update you in the morning." I stared at the message for a long moment. Justice feels strange when you're used to swallowing your pain in silence. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just kept sanding. Steady, calm, focused. The chair was nearly finished, and so was Helen. The next 3 days formed a strange, silent rhythm in the house. Two people living under the same roof, but no longer sharing the same world. Helen drifted from room to room like a prisoner waiting for sentencing. She kept trying to start conversations, but every attempt bounced off the wall of my voice. Measured, factual, unshakably calm. When someone can't manipulate your emotions anymore, they start drowning in their own. I spent those days building a plan so flawless no one could claim revenge or spite. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. Everything was deliberate. And Helen felt it tightening around her like a vice. On Thursday morning, she finally cracked. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she walked in, her hair unbrushed, her robe hanging crooked on her shoulders. "We need to talk," she said, voice hoarse from sleepless nights. I didn't look up from the French press. "We've talked," I replied. "No, we haven't. You've been stonewalling me, shutting me out, treating me like a criminal." I turned the stirrer once, slowly. "You're not a criminal," I said. "But your partner is." She flinched at the word partner. "John," she whispered. "I didn't know he was in trouble. I didn't know about the taxes or the lawsuits. He told me everything was handled." "That sounds familiar," I said. A tear spilled down her cheek. "Don't do that," she said. "Don't treat me like I'm stupid." "You're not stupid," I said. "You're reckless. And you gambled with the wrong man's life." She pressed a hand to her forehead. I just wanted someone to pay attention to me. You were always working in the garage or buried in your projects. Rick made me feel seen. And I'm sure the motel helped with that." She started sobbing, leaning against the counter for support. "He said he loved me," she whispered. "He said he wanted a future with me." "Then you should have let him pick you up from the motel," I said. Her knees buckled slightly. I took my coffee and walked past her without another word. Cruel? Nah. Cruelty is emotional. This was structure, truth, consequences. The things she never expected to face. Around noon, Tom arrived with the subtlety of a brick through a window. He barged in carrying a cardboard box full of receipts, photographs, and copies of documents Janet had requested. Helen looked terrified. Tom winked at her. "Relax. If you stop committing crimes, we'll stop collecting evidence." "Tom," I said sharply. He lifted both hands in surrender. Fine, I'll behave." But he didn't. Tom never behaved. We set up shop in the dining room again. Helen hovered in the doorway like a ghost tethered to regret. "What's all of that?" she asked. "Records," I said. "Everything you and Rick handled poorly." She blinked. Why are you still doing this?" "You know why." "John, please." "You had 18 months, I said. Now I have them." Her legs trembled. She backed away and retreated to the bedroom. Tom waited until she was gone before leaning close. "You know," he murmured, "watching her realize she can't control this anymore is satisfying." "It's necessary," I said. We spent hours combing through the mess she and Rick had left behind. Patterns emerged, lies connected, dates lined up too conveniently. Janet was right. This wasn't a slip or a moment of weakness. It was orchestration. At 3 p.m., the sheriff arrived to serve Helen with her official notice regarding the property hold order and preliminary discovery requests. Her face drained of color as he explained each requirement. She looked at me, pleading, broken, furious. "This is your doing," she whispered. It's the law, I corrected. She stared at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. And that was the point. I was no longer the man she thought she could cheat on and walk away from. I was the man who wouldn't flinch when she collapsed. That evening I found Helen sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky. She didn't look up when I stepped outside. You didn't have to do all of this, she said. Yes, I replied. I did? She shook her head slowly. You're not the man I married. You're not the woman I married, I said. Her lip trembled. Do you still love me? She asked quietly. I didn't answer. Silence is truth when words would be a lie. Inside, I spent the next hour preparing the final piece of my plan. The property division documents, the financial disclosures, the proposed arrangement that favored neither rage nor sentiment, just logic. Then I sent a message to Janet. Everything is ready. We proceed tomorrow. She replied immediately, Good, she won't see it coming. I put my phone down and stared at the pages spread across my desk. Tomorrow would be the day Helen learned what real consequences felt like. Not the ones she could cry her way out of. Not the ones she could twist or manipulate. Not the ones she could soften with promises or apologies. Real ones. Helen didn't sleep that night. I heard her pacing from room to room, opening closets, closing drawers, whispering to herself, crying quietly, then loudly, then quietly again. She'd finally reached the stage of grief that cheaters never expect. Helplessness. And it wasn't even over yet. Janet arrived the next morning at exactly 9 a.m. She was dressed in a charcoal suit sharp enough to cut glass. Ready? She asked. Yes, I said. We laid out the documents on the kitchen table. Tom arrived soon after, uninvited, but I didn't stop him. His presence made Helen nervous, and that wasn't a bad thing. 5 minutes later, Helen stepped out of the hallway. She had tried to put herself together, makeup covering swollen eyes, hair brushed, blouse neatly tucked. But the fragile tremor in her hands betrayed everything. What's all this? She asked. Janet gestured to the chair opposite me. Sit, she said. Helen sat. Janet opened the first folder. Mrs. Walker, she began, we will now review the preliminary division of marital property, the financial disclosures required by the court, and the documented evidence of marital misconduct. Helen's eyes widened. Misconduct? She stammered. Janet slid a stack of photographs across the table. When you intentionally transfer marital funds to conceal extramarital activity, Janet said calmly, it qualifies. Helen stared at the photos, hotel bookings, transfers to Rick's accounts, the motel footage Janet had lawfully obtained through the discovery process. She looked sick. John, she whispered, please don't do this. This isn't personal, I said. It's structural. She gasped as if I'd punched her. Janet continued, unwavering. These documents outline Mr. Walker's proposed settlement. They are firm. If challenged, we will pursue discovery in full, including subpoenas for all communications between you and Mr. Howell. Helen swallowed hard. What does that mean? It means, Janet said, that everything you tried to hide will become public record. Helen's breathing turned shallow. Tom watched with his arms crossed. I watched with steady, measured calm. Helen looked at me, desperate. You're destroying me, she whispered. No, I said. You destroyed everything. I'm simply not cleaning up after you. She broke. Her head dropped into her hands, shoulders shaking violently as sobs tore out of her. She cried for a long time, Messy, raw, uncontrolled. The kind of breakdown people have when they realize the consequences aren't a bluff. When she finally lifted her head, mascara streaked her cheeks. "What? What happens now?" she whispered. Janet closed the folder. "Now," she said, "you sign." Helen blinked. "That's it?" "No," Janet said, her voice like cold steel. "That's the beginning." Helen signed, slowly, with trembling hands, each stroke of the pen carving deep into the person she once was. When she finished, she set the pen down and whispered, "I hate him." Janet didn't even blink. Tom chuckled under his breath, and I simply said, "You don't get to hate me." She left the house that afternoon, packed some clothes, took nothing of value. She wasn't allowed to. She walked out without looking back. But the moment she closed the door behind her, I felt nothing. No relief, no victory, no sadness, just clarity. And a silence so clean it felt like oxygen. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because Helen still had one lesson left to learn. And it was coming. Helen didn't vanish. People like her never do. They drift. They cling. They circle back when the world stops shielding them. 3 days after she left, she returned. But not to the house. To the property line, standing next to Rick Howell. Like they thought they still had leverage. Tom and I were fixing a loose panel on the fence when I heard tires on gravel. Tom straightened up, squinting. "Speak of the devil," he muttered. I turned. A black SUV stopped near the mailbox. Helen stepped out, shivering in a thin coat. Beside her, Rick leaned against the car with the arrogance of a man who still believed he was a wolf and not a cornered rat. Tom exhaled slowly. "Oh, this is going to be fun." I didn't respond. I simply started walking. Rick saw me first. "You and I need to talk," he barked. "No," I said. He jerked his head back. "Excuse me? You heard me. No." Helen stepped forward. "John, please, this is important." "You lost the right to define what's important." Rick rolled his eyes. "Cut the theatrics. You've got paperwork. She wants answers. We're not leaving without—" "Rick." I raised one finger. He froze. "This is private property," I said. "You are not welcome here." "I don't care." "I do," I answered. "And the sheriff does too." Tom lifted his phone, showing the screen to Rick. "Want me to call him now?" he asked, cheerful as a man offering lemonade. Rick scoffed. "You wouldn't." I stepped closer. One deliberate, measured step. "You've made a career out of underestimating people," I said quietly. "But today is not the day to test me." The wind whistled between us. Snow cracked under our boots. Rick looked at Helen, lost, fragile, desperate, and for the first time I saw something flicker across his face. Fear. Not of me, of himself, of what he'd become, of what was closing in around him. He pushed off the hood of the SUV. "Fine, whatever, but this isn't over." "It is," I said. "You just haven't accepted it." Helen opened her mouth, but I cut her off with a simple gesture. "Leave," I said. "Both of you." She didn't move. "Helen," I said, "if you step 1 foot deeper onto this property, I will notify the court of a violation." Her lower lip trembled. Rick grabbed her arm. "Let's go." She resisted for half a second, just long enough to search my face for something that wasn't there. Then she turned away. They got into the SUV. The tires spun. The car disappeared down the road. Tom let out a low whistle. "Damn. You handled that like a surgeon." "I'm done handling them," I said. This was the last time. But I was wrong. The worst was still ahead. That night, the sheriff called. "Walker," he said, "just letting you know Howell's wife filed official charges. Fraud and concealment of marital assets. I leaned back in my chair. And he knows? Oh, he knows. He was served an hour ago. Good. Very good. Thanks for the update, I said. No problem. And Walker? Yes? Keep your doors locked. Men like him break before they bend. I know. I hung up and stared at the quiet house around me, the empty hallways, the neat rooms, the spaces Helen once filled with lies. Now she'd filled them with silence instead. 2 days later, my daughter Claire showed up out of nowhere. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She simply burst through the front door, eyes wide, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dad. I turned from the kitchen counter. Claire? She ran straight to me, hugging me so fiercely I staggered back a step. I'm so sorry, she whispered into my shoulder. I didn't know. Mom told me. God, Dad, she told me so many lies. I closed my eyes, held her tighter. It's over, I said softly. No, she said. It's not. She's falling apart. And Rick, she stopped. Everyone's talking about it. Of course they were. Small towns feast on scandal. I guided Claire to the table. She sat, wiping her eyes. She pulled out her phone and placed it in front of me. Look, she said. Screenshots, emails, messages, hidden photos, conversations between Helen and Rick, plans, dates, money transfers, and worst of all, a message from Helen to Rick sent months ago. He'll never fight back. That's why this will work. Claire covered her face. I didn't want to believe it, but she used you, Dad. She used all of us. I exhaled slowly. Pain didn't hit me anymore. Not with her. Not with any of this. But pride did. Pride in my daughter. Pride in her clarity, her courage, her choice to see the truth. Thank you, I said. She nodded, sniffing. I want to help. I don't care what people say. You don't have to take sides. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I already have. For the next week, the town changed. Some people supported me quietly, some loudly. Some pretended not to know anything but whispered at the grocery store. Human nature, in its cheap packaging. Only one thing was consistent. Rick's world was collapsing. And Helen's was collapsing with him. They tried to patch the sinking ship together, calling lawyers, denying rumors, trying to hide the things already uncovered. But each day something else cracked. A loan default, a frozen account, a subpoena, a neighbor finally speaking up, a business partner walking away. Rick stopped showing his face around town. Helen tried, but the stares followed her everywhere. Her reputation died exactly the way she killed our marriage. Quietly, gradually, one truth at a time. Then came the final blow. Janet called me at 9:46 a.m. John, she said, I just received confirmation. The court approved the injunction. Helen has 24 hours to collect her belongings, and only under supervised entry. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. And Rick? I asked. He's facing charges. His wife filed for an emergency protective order. His accounts are under investigation. Pause. He won't bother you again. I believed her. I didn't expect him to be brave. Cowards rarely are when the world stops enabling them. Helen arrived at 3 p.m. She brought 3 suitcases. No pride. The deputy escorted her in. She walked through the house slowly, touching furniture, running her hand along door frames, letting memories slice through her like blades. This used to be my home, she whispered. It used to be our home, I corrected. She swallowed. You really don't love me anymore, she said. I didn't answer. She looked down. I made mistakes. You made choices, I said. She looked up, eyes shimmering with tears. I thought he was my escape. He was your cage, I said. You just didn't see it yet. She dropped her gaze. After 10 minutes, she returned to the hallway, holding a folder, a thick one, her handwriting scrawled across the cover. "What's that?" I asked. "A letter," she said weakly. "From me, to you." She extended it. "Please read it." I didn't take it. "Leave it on the counter," I said. She set it down, trembling. "Goodbye, John," she whispered. I didn't respond. She left. The deputy followed. The door clicked shut. The house exhaled. And I finally picked up the letter. But I didn't open it. Not then. Not ever. Instead, I walked to the trash bin, lifted the lid, and let it fall quietly into the dark. Some things don't deserve a second life. The next morning, Tom and I drove to Maple Ridge Cemetery. He needed to visit his wife. I needed silence. We stood there in the cold, staring at the headstone. Tom spoke first. "She'd be proud of you, you know." "For what?" I asked. "For not letting them destroy you." I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets. It still feels like a loss. "It is," Tom said, "but not all losses are failures." He was right. Some losses carve space for something new. When we got home, a young couple was waiting near my workshop, a tall man with nervous hands and a woman cradling a baby under a knitted blanket. "Mr. Walker," the man said. "Yes? We're here for the rocking chair." Ah, the commission I'd almost forgotten. I led them into the shop. The chair sat in the center of the room, gleaming from the final layer of finish, its curves smooth, its joints perfect. The young mother touched the armrest. "It's beautiful." "Try it," I said. She sat. The baby shifted in her arms. The chair moved, smooth, rhythmic, steady. "Feels like it breathes with you," she whispered. "That's the idea." I showed them how to sway it gently, how to listen to the creak outside as the chair moved, how to let it steady thoughts the way it steadied motion. The father looked at me with quiet admiration. "You made this yourself?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "It's a gift, a real one." They paid. They thanked me. They left with something built from patience, not desperation, not betrayal, not chaos. And the silence they left behind felt clean. That evening Claire came by again. She hugged me. We ate dinner together. We talked, not about Helen, not about Rick, but about the future. "Dad?" she asked as she helped me clean up. "Are you okay?" I thought for a moment. "I'm rebuilding," I said. She smiled softly. "Then I want to be part of that. You already are." Later, I stepped onto the porch alone. The night was cold, the air sharp, the stars bright. I breathed in deeply, exhaled, and felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph, not closure, just acceptance. A quiet, steady acceptance that didn't need witnesses or applause. I had lost money, a marriage, time, illusions. But I hadn't lost myself. And in the aftermath of everything Helen destroyed, that was the one thing I could still build from. The one thing that would last. When I re-entered the workshop, I ran my hand along the frame of the door. The wood felt warm, smooth, familiar. I picked up a chisel, set it down again, turned off the lights. Tomorrow, I would start something new. Not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I finally had space for the future. A future not defined by betrayal, not weighed down by what I lost, not shaped by someone else's chaos. A future built the same way I built every piece of furniture. Patiently, silently, honestly. I locked the shop door, walked into the house, and let the night close behind me. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was simply the moment I stopped being broken and started being whole. The morning after everything settled, I woke before sunrise. No nightmares, no old fears, just the natural quiet that comes when the storm is finally done, ripping your life apart. The floorboards were cool under my feet. The house smelled like cedar and coffee and something else. Something clean. Freedom. For the first time in years. I opened the curtains. Maple Creek shimmered under the early light, the town still half asleep. Snow clung to the rooftops. Smoke rose from distant chimneys, and the river moved with a low, steady hum. Life was continuing, and so was I. Claire came down the stairs an hour later, hair a mess, wrapped in the old quilt her grandmother made. "You're up early," she said, yawning. "Couldn't sleep. Are you okay?" I nodded once. "Better than okay." She studied my face the way children do when they've had to grow up too fast. Then she smiled. "Good." We made breakfast together, eggs, toast, orange slices, and sat in the kitchen with the kind of silence that wasn't heavy or painful. Just natural, just ours. "Dad," Claire finally said, pushing her fork aside, "I don't want to stay with Mom anymore." I looked up. "She's going through a lot," I said. "She caused a lot," she whispered, "and she still won't tell the truth. Not to me, not to anyone." Her voice cracked. "I can't be around that." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to decide today." "I already did," she said. "I want to live here." My throat tightened, not with grief, but with something gentler, something that felt like a second chance. "Then this is your home," I said. She exhaled with relief, leaning back in her chair. "Thank you," she whispered. But she didn't need to thank me. Not for that. Not ever. After breakfast, Claire joined me in the workshop. "Teach me something today," she said. So I handed her a block of maple and a sanding block. "First rule," I said, "don't fight the grain. Move with it." She followed my movements, her strokes uneven at first, then smoother. "This is peaceful," she murmured. "It is," I said. She kept sanding, eyes narrowed in concentration, shoulders relaxing. A piece of wood becoming something better in her hands. A child growing into someone stronger in front of me. Maybe that's what healing looked like. Not dramatic, not loud, not cinematic. Just work. Small steps. Steady hands. Later that day, Tom came by. He carried a tin foil tray and smelled faintly of gasoline and sawdust. "Brought pie," he announced, letting himself in. Claire beamed. "Apple? Of course," he winked. "Only kind worth making." We ate it on the porch, the three of us, passing the tray around like some makeshift family ceremony. Tom leaned back in his chair. "Town's buzzing today." "Oh?" I said. "Rick's bail hearing didn't go well." Claire stiffened. "Is he going to jail?" Tom shrugged. "Hard to say, but he won't be bothering you. His wife filed enough paperwork to build a cabin." I didn't smile. Couldn't. Justice shouldn't taste like joy. Just necessity. "And your ex?" Tom asked quietly. I looked out over the yard. "Haven't heard from her." "No surprise there," he muttered. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt was something else. Something colder and kinder. Distance. 3 days later, I saw Helen again. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. I was leaving the hardware store, arms full of screws and a new chisel set, when she stepped into my path, as if she'd been waiting. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes hollow, her coat too thin for the cold. "John," she whispered, "please." I set the tools in the back of the truck. "Helen, I just want to talk. There's nothing left to talk about." She swallowed hard. "I lost everything." "I know. You don't care?" I looked at her, really looked, at the exhausted face, at the trembling hands, at the woman who once shared my life, but had long stopped sharing my honesty. "Helen," I said softly, "I cared for years. You stopped caring first." She covered her face, shaking. "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made decisions." She lowered her hands. "I loved you," she said weakly. "Maybe," I said, "but not well." Her knees buckled, and she sat on the curb, crying into her palms. I didn't kneel beside her. I didn't comfort her. I didn't hate her. I simply let her feel the consequences she'd avoided for so long. Some lessons can't be learned gently. When she finally stood, wiping her face, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "I hope you find a life you don't need to lie in." She took a deep breath, stepped back, and walked away. Not dramatically, not angrily, just defeated. I watched her go without bitterness, because forgiveness wasn't letting someone back in. Forgiveness was letting yourself move on. And I already had. Weeks passed, snow melted, porch steps dried, birds returned. Claire moved fully into the house, filling it with music and textbooks and the loud, unpredictable energy of youth. She helped me in the workshop, learned to sharpen chisels, learned to hold wood steady, learned to read grain like a map. "You ever think about dating again?" she asked me once. I chuckled. "Not particularly." "Why not?" I brushed sawdust from the workbench. "I'm busy." "With what?" "Living." She smiled at that, soft, proud. "I think that's a good answer," she said. One Saturday morning, while we were cutting lumber for her bookshelves, my phone buzzed. Janet. I stepped outside to answer. "Walker," she said, "you're going to like this." "What's happened?" Rick pleaded guilty. I exhaled, slow and steady. His wife filed for emergency custody. The judge sided with her. He's on supervised visitation. "What about Helen?" "She filed for a small apartment in the next town over," Janet said. "No job yet. But she's staying out of trouble." Good. Quiet. Far away. Contained. "And you," she added, "are officially done. The divorce settlement is final. You keep the house, your shop, your accounts, your land. Everything is signed." My chest felt lighter. "Thank you, Janet." "You earned this," she said. "Now enjoy it." I hung up and leaned against the porch railing. Not happy, not triumphant, just anchored, free. Months stretched on, slowly, steadily, beautifully. Tom and I fixed up the back shed. Claire and I finished her bookshelves. The rocking chair commission led to 2 more, then 5, then a wedding table, then a cabinet that turned into a local conversation piece. People in Maple Creek began stopping me at the farmer's market, asking, "Are you the carpenter who made the Peterson rocking chair?" Or, "Are you taking custom orders?" Or, "My daughter's getting married. Do you build benches?" Work grew. Life followed. Peace settled around everything like dust on fresh varnish. One warm afternoon in spring, Claire and I were sanding a tabletop when she asked, "Dad, do you ever regret not fighting harder to keep your marriage?" I rested my hand on the wood. "No," I said after a moment, "because I finally realized something." "What?" "That you can't rebuild a house with rotten beams. You can patch it, repaint it, hide the cracks, but eventually it collapses. Better to build something new, with clean wood and steady hands." She nodded slowly. "That makes sense." "It took me a long time to learn," I added. "Good," she said, smiling softly, "because I'm learning from you." That was the moment, unexpected and quiet, when I knew I had won something far more valuable than revenge. I had earned my daughter's trust, her respect, her honesty. No money could ever replace that. The following Sunday, Mary from the post office stopped me outside the store. "John," she said, shifting her grocery bag, "we're having a community dinner next weekend. You should come." I smiled politely. "I'll think about it." "You always say that?" she scolded gently. "Then never show up." "I've been busy." "No one's that busy," she said. "Besides, I'm bringing lemon bars." I hesitated, just enough for her to grin. "I'll be there," I said. "Good," she replied, tapping my arm. "It's time for you to live again." When I got home, Claire was on the porch, legs crossed, headphones in. She took them off when she saw me. "You okay?" she asked. I sat beside her. "I think so," I said. We listened to the creek, the birds, the rustling leaves. The world didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt open, like a doorway, like a beginning. That night, after Claire went to bed, I walked into the workshop alone. The smell of pine and varnish hugged the air. A breeze drifted through the slightly open window. Moonlight slid across the tools like silver. I approached the rocking chair I had just finished, the one for the new couple expecting twins. I placed my hand on the backrest. Then I sat in it. The wood shifted under my weight, creaking once, then settling. I rocked gently. Forward, back, forward. The world outside hummed softly. An owl called in the distance. The creek murmured its endless story. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt whole. Not untouched, not unscarred, not unchanged, but whole. The kind of whole that comes only after everything breaks. I touched the armrest, closed my eyes, and whispered to no one, "I'm still here." And that was enough. More than enough. Before going inside, I turned off the lamp in the shop and paused at the doorway. One foot in the workshop, one on the porch. A threshold. A place between what was and what will be. The past behind me. The future waiting. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. Into light. Into quiet. Into a life that was finally mine again. Not rebuilt from what she destroyed, but built from what I chose to save.